Dennis and Chase produced baseball. I was in San Diego. I plugged all the cameras in, set up all the audio. They took everything in the control room in New Mexico, and we ran the best baseball championship we've ever done by far, because it's the first time we've actually had an established control room to do it in. And I was just like, done. I have to do it. And so we're going to be doing that this year.
Welcome in to the latest episode of the Sports Prod Pod. I know we said we would talk football, but we're going to, Ross Geller, pivot away because we have a very special guest. Dennis, you know the special guest well. Why don't you go ahead and introduce him?
Yes, one of my dear friends, not just in the business but in life. Brian Tripp, the Associate Commissioner for Broadcast Production for the Mountain West Conference, a conference that is obviously near and dear to my heart, being at Wyoming. So Trippy, welcome in. Thanks for hanging out with us tonight.
Thank you. Yeah, good to be here, guys.
So, Brian, I thought what we would start with is this, for me anyway, was a good chance to remind the world that the Mountain West was the first conference to have its own conference network, even before the Big Ten. The Mountain, or the MTN, as it was stylized. You were heavily involved with that back, what was that, 2011, 2012, around there?
2006 is when we started. And it ended in 2012. So I'll give you the whole background there. So I was working for Fox Sports in Denver. I worked at two local TV stations. I worked at KSL in Salt Lake City right out of college. And then my wife's also in the business, and she got a job in San Diego at KUSI as a reporter. And I went to San Diego. We lived in San Diego for about 5 years. And so I worked at KGTV in San Diego. So I was about 10 years in local TV. And I say this all the time when I talk to anybody, either in the business or if somebody's interviewing for a job. If you worked any time in local TV, I have huge respect for you, because local TV, still just the newsroom itself, you learn so much. You get about 10 years of experience for every year you work in a newsroom, because you're doing so much. And then in 2001, I moved to Denver to work for Fox Sports. And at that time, Fox Sports had the Denver Nuggets, the Colorado Avalanche, and the Colorado Rockies. We had them all. And so I was one of the studio producers, and it was a dream job for me, and came to Denver. My wife was pregnant with our first child, 2001. That child is now 22 and married. So things have gone by very quickly. So 2001 to 2006, I was at Fox Sports, and I got an email, just a random email from a former producer at Fox, saying that they're starting this new network called The Mountain, and it was going to be based at the Comcast Media Center in Denver, and that I should look into it. And sure enough, because at that time, Utah and BYU were still in the conference, and I grew up in Salt Lake City and went to the University of Utah. So I had dealings with San Diego State, living in San Diego, Utah because I went there, BYU because I covered them when I was at KSL in Salt Lake City. And then when I came to Denver working with Fox, I had dealings with Wyoming, Colorado State, and Air Force. So I had personal dealings with 6 of the institutions with the Mountain West. And so when I interviewed with them, it was a Comcast. A bunch of people came out from Philadelphia and did a bunch of interviews. And I basically went through my rundown of interactions with all the schools, and they're like, yeah, you need to work here. So I was hired as one of the senior producers. Gosh, what was my title? I don't even remember my title when I started in 2006. My title when I left, I was the news director. I think I was hired as the news director. I may have had, coordinating producer. I think that's what it was. I think I was coordinating producer for studio, and they changed it to news director about halfway through. And that was, I loved that job because I got to deal with all the schools that I knew, the University of Utah, which was near and dear to my heart, dealing with all of those guys over there. Still have a lot of good friends at BYU and Utah from my time at the Mountain. And it was an interesting work environment because Comcast, it was a split. Comcast and CBS owned it 50-50. So the managing partner was Comcast. So my paycheck came from Comcast, but I didn't get any benefits from Comcast because we were owned 50% by CBS. So I didn't get any of the Comcast stock options or any of the cool stuff that you could get. But the management it was a little bit of a weird kind of upper management, how they kind of fought over who did what, who paid for what. Um, and we were the very first ones to deal with everything that deals with today. I mean, you've just recently you've heard of the DirecTV deal with Disney, right? So right before the football game the other night, DirecTV pulls all of Disney's networks off, and so a bunch of people thought they were going to watch the what was it, the LSU USC game. 15 minutes before they pull it because it's a carriage. They're all fighting over carriage. We were like the first ones to do that. The Mountain came in, owned by Comcast. We thought we had a deal with DirecTV and or Dish Network coming in, and we didn't. So we were Comcast only from like 2006 to 2008, and some other small cable operators around the country. And in 2008, I think we got our first deal with one of the DBS, and it was DirecTV. And I remember my general manager like running down the hallway and just hugging me, saying, "We finally have carriage on something other than cable, so people can go get it." And we would have stacks of emails. Our general manager would print them all and say, "I want everybody on the upper management to read these emails and look at and see if there's anything in here that we need to answer for." Most of the emails were just angry people having to pay or didn't have quick access to the games they were used to having. And our message to them was, we're sorry, but this is the future and this is where it's going, whether you like it or not, because the Pac 12 is right behind us. The Big Ten is right behind us. SEC is right. Like you could see it coming down the tracks. And from our standpoint, and it's been more than a decade, so I can probably say this now, but it was our understanding that Comcast basically came in and did this with the Mountain West to prove to the SEC that it could be done. And then they went after the SEC hard and almost got it, from my understanding. But SEC decided to do their network with ESPN. So that was all just very interesting, learning all that. On the side of dealing with all of the carriage stuff, I was also the news director, coordinating producer for studio. So we're doing studio shows. We would have triple header football games, and we'd do an hour pregame show plus halftimes plus in betweens. So on Saturdays, we're there from 9 in the morning till midnight. We worked a 4-day work week during football just because Saturday was a 15 to 16 hour day. And then we'd give everybody Sunday, Monday, Tuesday off or something like that. But it was fun. It was great. It was an amazing learning experience in hiring talent and for not only for games, but for studio and bringing them in and working with them and teaching them. Little side note, I guess, see if we have time here. It was when Joel Klatt was just getting into the business, and Joel Klatt's agent reached out to me and my boss, Steve Hurlbut, and said, "Hey, we want to get Joel Klatt on your stuff." And we looked at Joel's stuff. We're like, Joel's amazing, but he's a University of Colorado guy, and Colorado's not in the Mountain West. And we already had a Colorado guy named Jay Lewinberg, and Jay was doing stuff for us. And so I tell the story sometimes. I'm like probably the only guy that turned down Joel Klatt. I could have been the first one to get him on air, but then he started doing stuff for the Rockies and then Fox, and now he's like the best in the business. I wish I would have hired Joel Klatt. That would have been cool to have that connection. But those six, so it was 2006 to 2012, and like 2011, 2010, around that time, there was a huge shift in college athletics. BYU and Utah both left the Mountain West. Utah went to the Pac-12. BYU went independent in reaction to Utah leaving. And then the Mountain West, in reaction to that, grabbed Boise State and Fresno State and San Jose State and Utah State. There was a bunch of moving parts. TCU was also in the Mountain West, and TCU jumped and went to the Big 12. And so the carriage stuff was such a big deal. You had a cable operator in Boise, you had a cable operator in Fresno, you had cable operators in Salt Lake, and the coming and going of the Mountain, they just couldn't handle it anymore and didn't know where they were going to make their money. So by then, Comcast had purchased NBC. So now I was working for NBC instead of Comcast. So now my bosses were NBC and CBS, which was even more strange. And they pulled the plug. They're like, yeah, we don't know the carriage and all the shifting and universities coming and going. We're going to pull the plug on this. And so that was in the fall of 2011, October of 2011. Meetings in our studios. Hey, we're pulling the plug. We'll be off the air May, like the end of May. They were going to take us through the year, so we still had to do, basketball and in baseball and everything else. So end of May, we were off the air. And that was an interesting time managing a staff. I managed a staff of about 50, managing a staff of 50 people who knew in 6 months they were all losing their jobs, and watching them leave one at a time as they were finding their next job, and trying to motivate the staff and keep them. And similar to what the Pac-12 networks just went through, we had some incentives. I had a pretty good severance. If you stay to this date, you get paid, beyond that for many, many months beyond. So I was pretty well taken care of by NBC. I've always appreciated that. So a lot of the staff were able to stick around. And then that ended in 2012, and I was unemployed from May of 2012 to August of 2013. So little over a year. And in that year, my friends at the Mountain West, Brett Gilliland, Jabin Hendlin, Dan Butterly, who's now the commissioner at the Big West, they took that year to renegotiate all of their contracts with their partners, CBS and ESPN, and pull all of the digital rights. Brilliant on their part. They pulled all of their digital rights over that year and said, we want to do something with those digital rights. When they got all of the contracts signed, they posted the job that I have now. And I think I got a call from Jabin or somebody saying, hey, or maybe even been Jesse Kurtz, hey, check out this job. I think it's perfect for you. So that's where that started. And then I walked into, by that time, they had already, for a couple of months ahead of time, already sent some equipment to all the schools. I wish I'd have been involved in the purchase of all that equipment. What they sent was fine. It was pretty low end. It was just enough to get the schools kind of going. And I walked in and they said, okay, here, it's yours now. Good luck. Here's a budget and make it happen. And I just walked in, didn't have a huge technical background. I knew enough. My background is mostly in producing, sitting in the producing chair in studios, and a little bit in live events before then. And I've done obviously a lot more since then. And then we went from there.
So Brian, obviously that's the Cliff Notes, guys. Like that's the short version of how this all happened. 'Cause I've heard the full story, and we could be here for a while. So, for those that don't know out there, we are probably, I think we're the only major of the P4 group of 5 area that aren't with ESPN. So
I
we're
think
kind
you're
of,
right. I think
we're doing our own thing.
WCC was not with ESPN for a while, but they just started with ESPN a couple of years ago. Yeah, I think you're right. I think we're the only ones.
And so, it's our 11 schools plus Colorado College, who is an affiliate member in soccer, women's soccer. So it's the 11 plus CC in that one sport. And we do all our own shows, and Brian really is kind of the czar, if you will, of this Mountain West network. So Brian, why don't you kind of lay out where it was in 2013? You kind of started to talk about, I remember those days, and we were streaming with a MacBook Pro and a little Blackmagic capture card that you could bring 4 cameras in on. And now, 11 years starting, we've just started year 12 of the Mountain West Network, the digital version. Now you've got, we have a control room. New Mexico's got a control room. Colorado State's got a nice control room. Boise State's got a great truck. Air Force has got more TriCasters than I can count
4 or
on one
5
hand.
control rooms. Yeah.
Yeah. So, what is the day? I know what it is, but for everybody out there, what is the day-to-day like coordinating 11 schools worth of broadcasts?
Yeah. We do about 1,300 broadcasts a year, if you count some of the press conferences that get thrown in. Like just today, I think we had 6 press conferences. Well, you didn't because your internet went out, right, Dennis? What's going on with that?
So 5, but it should have been 6. The internet in our football building went out today. So if you're a Wyoming fan and you have to be listening, that's why the press conference wasn't on today.
Yeah, exactly. So yeah, we do about 1,300 broadcasts, and that's mid-August through end of May. So no broadcasts June and July. So it's really 1,300 broadcasts over 9.5 months. Is my math right there? It's a lot. I mean, you're into the many hundreds of broadcasts. November is crossover season. Men's basketball, women's basketball, volleyball, soccer, football still. So you've got 2 big months, November and March. And during those months, my phone, my wife gets on me constantly for just my phone ringing off the hook, even in the evenings, trying to go to dinner. There's been many times I've gone to dinner with my family, laptop on my side, and get a phone call. Yep, I can take care of that. You jump on your laptop, turn on the hotspot, get on the computer for 5 minutes, and fix whatever issue it is. But the day-to-day really is revolved around making sure all of those 1,300 broadcasts are up, ready, running. All of the RTMP addresses are now, or SRT addresses, which we use now, are pointed in the right direction, making sure the website, all the times are correct. I have processes in place where I'm double and triple checking myself, and I'm constantly, fixing little things here and there. Times may be off by an hour. And then, Dennis, you don't deal with this because you don't have softball or baseball. But then during softball and baseball season, I might have 5 broadcasts in one day, and 4 of them are going to get postponed, or there's lightning delays or rain delays, or now this is a doubleheader on the next day. And the COVID stuff was a nightmare with all the reschedulings and everything like that. So it's a lot of, once I get everything scheduled, just kind of making sure the dam doesn't break and that everything runs smoothly. And I'm triple checking every morning. Dennis has seen many of the emails that I send out. Please, everybody, triple check, look at the website, make sure I have my times right, because I've put all these these events in, and I'm sure in those 1,300 events I've messed something up. And one thing I say all the time is, we've got 1,300 events. If we have 98% success rate, what does that leave us? That still leaves us a couple of 100 events that have gone bad. So, I'm trying to get to 100%, and that's hard. Even at 1,300 events at 99% success rate, that's 120-ish bad events. That's 2 or 3 a week at 99%. So it's really hard to stay on top of everything. And then on top of that, that's just regular season. And then I'm also in charge of all of the championships and making sure that those all run smoothly. I think we stream everything. We started streaming golf last year. I think we're streaming everything. And I think, what do we have? 19, 20 something championships, if you count
something like that, yeah.
Both genders. So, I'll have between the mid-April to end of May, I've got like 7 championships that we're streaming over basically 9 weeks. So it's a lot of traveling as well. And I take Dennis on a lot of those trips because I need backup, and it's a lot of fun.
So you say you don't do too much in the off season, which is, kind of the nature of this beast, but you guys did something different this year, it seemed like, with Football Media Day. Dennis talked about it a little bit on the first episode here. Can you talk a little bit more about that and just how that all came about?
Yeah, we did our Football Media Day for the second year in a row at Circa Resort and Casino. And we've done a live show during Football Media Days for the past 3 or 4 years. And that live show is, as you would expect, it's live interviews. And so Jesse Kurtz is our host. And Bridget Howard was host with him. Bridget just moved on, and we've hired Carly Drew to take her place as the second studio host. And so Jesse and Bridget would get on set, interview coach and players. We cycle through all the teams, all 12 teams. Each team's up there for 30 minutes, and all of a sudden you've got a 6-hour broadcast just with that. So we've done that for the last few years. And our commissioner, Gloria Navarez, to her credit, she has really, really big ideas and likes to say, how can we make this even bigger and better? And I think she was walking around the sports book at Circa, or somebody was showing her, and she was like, could we do the show here? And, 6 or 7 years ago, especially in college athletics, you would have never imagined putting a sports book all over your digital network. Well, times have certainly changed. And she's and Javen, my direct supervisor, and Jesse, my partner in the office, the three of us got together. We're like, did she is she really doing what we think we're being asked to do here? Is splash sportsbook and all over, with lines and everything. But sure enough, so we went down there, and I took Dennis, and we went over there. We were there for basketball, right? It was basketball championship in March, and I took Dennis
Yeah.
over to Circa, and I was like, all right, guys, how do we pull this off? What do we do? And we just walked
Well,
around. We walked around the sports book, and we went down and over to, and that sports book in particular has a studio, and it's a VISN, the VISN studios, because they do a lot of their they do all their live shows from that sports book. And we're looking in the VISN studio. Can we set up in here? No, let's set up over here. No, let's set up. And we decided that our setup was going to be the basically the giant video board that is that sports book was going to be our backdrop. And the guys at Circa let us have the run of the place. And the guy had a little iPad. He's like, all right, what do you want in what TV? And we're like, well, let's put program in those TVs. Let's put the Mountain West logo in that giant TV. Let's put the Boise State logo and the Air Force logo on the Fresno State logo. Let's put them here and here. And he's like punching it all out. It was like, done. And, Dennis, with his crew, I lean on Dennis hard, basically, I give Dennis my ideas, and he puts the technical plan together, and we figure out what we're going to ship from all the schools. And Dennis built a control room with the help of Rob and Chase and a couple of his guys. And we had a control room in the actual sports book and had cables thrown up over the top to the cameras and the audio setup. And yeah, if you get a chance to look at the Mountain West football media days, it's spectacular. The backdrop there was unbelievable.
I think it's only appropriate that the conference that has UNLV does something from the sports book for the first time, you know?
Yes, exactly. And it's
Yeah.
UNLV has been fighting that fight for years. The NCAA for years wouldn't put any NCAA events in not in but Nevada, the state of Nevada, no NCAA events, none. So if you just until I think it's been like the last 5 years where that's loosened up to where the NCAA has opened it up and been like, okay, we'll put a men's basketball regional at T-Mobile. UNLV hosted one of those a couple of years ago for the first time ever. And they always were asking, Commissioner Craig Thompson and the bosses to push the NCAA to let that happen. And they never would, because they were so scared of all the gambling stuff. That's why because we know it, we live it with two schools in Nevada. We're so surprised that our commissioner was like, yep, do it. I'm like, okay.
And, to kind of go back to what Brian said, we were there for the basketball championship, which is at Thomas and Mack Center, where UNLV plays their home games. And I think it was like 2 or 3 days before I flew out from Laramie to go to Vegas to do the basketball championship, like we've done every year for, I don't know, I've lost count at this point, but
Yeah.
And Brian said, hey, like when we get down there first or second day, I need you to come over to Circa with me and check something out. And I said, okay. And I didn't, he said it was for football media day. And I was like, okay, cool. Like we had done football media day in Circa the year before.
In a
And we
hallway.
had done it in a hallway and like in the conference area, right? Where all the conference rooms and stuff are. We had taken the main area and put a stage, and we had taken one of the conference rooms over and built a control room and run cables out. So I was like, oh, okay, they probably just want to do the same thing. And we're driving over, and Brian's driving, and I'm sitting in the passenger seat. And I said, so are we just doing the same kind of thing we did last year? And he goes, no, Gloria, the commissioner, wants to do it in the sports book. And I kind of looked at him cross-eyed because of that same conversation of what college what?
Yeah.
College athletics in a sports book, what? And I was like, all right, I mean, we, you do crazy things in broadcasting all the time. You do new things. So my initial reaction was, oh, this, all right, let's see what we have over here. And then I saw it, and then I kind of saw the vision, and I just, my eyes got really wide, and I immediately started spending Brian's money in my head, just how we wanted to do it. And I mean, honestly, I can say, a media day is by any stretch is not the most revolutionary or really even exciting idea that you could ever come up with, right? But this is one of the coolest things I think I've ever been a part of in my career, just because of how unique it was and the challenges that it presented. And like Brian said, the Circa guys were awesome. I mean, they fed us two encoders that they could take my aux outputs out of my switcher, and they really just kind of said to me, all right, what do you want here? What do you want here? Have fun, do your thing. And I personally, I mean, I'm biased. Obviously, I directed it, but I think it turned out great.
Yeah, it might be one of the best. That and the football championship show, which you also directed. Those are
Mhm.
like the two best as far as live studio shows. By far, the two best things we've done. And we had several freelancers that I hired from the local Vegas market that work on UNLV productions, and so I know some of them. Matt, the audio guy, was taking pictures constantly, just like, this is the coolest thing I've ever been a part of. This is unbelievable what you guys pulled off here. So it was those things are always fun, although sitting I've we talked about it being like the old 1960s and 70s days, having to smell cigar smoke while you're switching a show. We haven't done that in a while.
I didn't get my old fashioned at the director station that I requested from the
A
bar.
cigarette hanging
That
out of
didn't
your
happen.
mouth with a old
Yeah.
fashioned. Take camera 4.
But I will say the other thing about all of these things, whether it's football media day or the basketball championship or baseball or tennis or whatever we're streaming, is, and one thing that I think the Mountain West has that's pretty unique. I could be wrong, but um, to be able to work with the other, we'll call them video directors, the other heads of the video departments, um, guys that I've become friends with over the last 12 years. And that to me is one of the coolest parts of it too, is that I think for football media day, it was me, it was Charlie Bramhall, Jordan Toller from my staff, Rob Parrish from Air Force came down, Chase Christensen, a phenomenal assistant AD for video at New Mexico, came down. And then UNLV chipped in a bunch of their guys too. And then at the basketball championship, it's Boise State and it's Wyoming and it's Air Force and it's UNLV. And just to be able to work together with your counterparts, your rivals on the field, right? And rivals in fan bases, but to develop these relationships with these guys at the other schools in your conference and then be able to pull off these awesome productions with them is also, to me, one of the cooler things about it.
Yeah, I get looped in on emails all the time of, hey, because we'll share. We created a graphics package that I've distributed to all the schools, and so when you're dealing with a graphics package, obviously there's always questions. And now every school has their own, whether you use an expression or a Chiron, or we use a program called New Blue. So people constantly have questions. I'll get looped in and be like, hey, how do I do this? And be like, I don't know. Chase at New Mexico probably knows. Can you help? Well, how do I do this? I don't know. Adam at Air Force probably knows. Adam, can you? And it's constant back and forth and seeing everybody helping each other out. You're right. I wonder if that happens anywhere else.
I will say I was that guy at the Big South. It was, hey, Nick at Charleston Southern knows. Go ahead and reach out to him. So
Yep.
I can
Yeah.
at least speak to the Big South in that case, that it was happening there. So
Brian, one of the, to go back to the original premise of the conversation when we were talking about the mountain, the one thing that I've always really appreciated about the Mountain West is its willingness to be on the forefront and try something new and stick their neck out and say, hey, if it works, it works. If it doesn't, we just won't do it again. And we're not necessarily inventing the REMI or really reinventing the REMI, but I know coming up this season, that's something that you have really kind of made a commitment to for some of your championships. So maybe like let's talk about that a little bit.
Yeah. So this, I think, has been a couple of years in the making. I mean, Dennis, you and I have been talking about this. We've probably been talking about this for 3 or 4 years. Like, um, me having access to your control room is something that I wanted for my championships. You know, when you're traveling to, and what really brought this on is a lot of our championships are being looked at as being taken off campus and going neutral site. And when I go to a campus, I have a lot of help. And depending on what campus it is, they may be able to handle an entire championship broadcast on their own. Sometimes I don't even need to be there. But when you go neutral site and all of a sudden our baseball championship might be taken to Phoenix, what am I going to do? Well, I don't have the budget to hire, Rush Media or um, some of those other groups come in and spend $150,000 over 5 days to do 9 baseball games or whatever it is. And so, as I saw this coming over the last couple of years, like, all right, what am I going to do here? And about 3 years ago, TVU, I do a lot with TVU. They help me out a lot during our cross country championships. I've rented those, the cell bonded encoders from TVU for the last few years. And just in chatting with them a few years ago, they told me about one of their new products back then, TVU RPS remote production system, I think is what it's called. And it's an encoder that's got 6 outs and 2 ins, and a decoder that's got 6 ins and 2 outs. And it uses public internet. So you can take the encoder, so you can take the decoder and you can install it in a rack in your control room. And then you can take the encoder and you can take it anywhere on campus. And that's exactly what New Mexico did. And we had some budget that we were able to give to the schools a few years ago, and New Mexico used some of that money and purchased this TVU RPS system, and it was phenomenal. It changed their entire, like, it made them one of the best because they had a nice control room at the pit, but they did not have the ability to gain access to their volleyball venue, which is a few miles away on a different part of campus. Like, running fiber through the middle of a city, like, you're just not going to do that. So as soon as he hooked that up and it worked, it was like, oh baby, I got to get me one of those. And I found the budget money this last year and I purchased one, and Dennis has installed the decoder in his control room. I have the encoder sitting in a box still in my office. We haven't even had time to test it yet. It just came a couple of weeks ago, and we'll be doing some testing this week with it. And that gives me access to one of the best university control rooms, probably west of the Mississippi. Dennis's control room is top notch, and he's got more than one. He's got 2 control rooms that he can do 2 things at once. And so now I have access to take this one RU 6 out and 2 in encoder with me to my soccer championship and my football championship and my swimming championship and maybe my basketball championship and my what else did we talk about? We talked about softball. We talked about baseball. So just instantly, I have a top-notch control room that I can now elevate at minimum 7 of my championships with one cost, and it's over public internet. The return, so we used it at baseball. Chase let us use his at New Mexico, and Dennis, I flew Dennis to New Mexico during our baseball championship. Dennis and Chase produced baseball. I was in San Diego. I plugged all the cameras in, set up all the audio. They took everything in the control room in New Mexico, and we ran the best baseball championship we've ever done by far, because it's the first time we've actually had an established control room to do it in. And I was just like, done. I have to do it. And so we're going to be doing that this year. At minimum 5. Oh, I forgot about basketball media days. We're going to do basketball media days from your control. So I'm talking 6, 8 events instantly that I can elevate, and cross country, 9 events, like all these things I keep forgetting that we're doing out of your control room that, normally I would do maybe out of my space in my office. And I've got a little vmix machine where I can do some pretty good stuff, but nothing like what Dennis can do out of his control room. So when I talk to these companies, constantly I'm getting asked, because everybody's in this space now. So they've all got their LTNs in this space, and BMGs in this space, and Rush's in this space, where they all want to do your REMIs. And I say to them, yeah, I do REMIs out of my own control room. And they all go, oh, okay, good for you. You figured out how to do it. And I can do it at 60 or 70% the cost. I think it's going to be a great year.
Dennis said that you guys are really pushing some things there, and it definitely sounds like it. And this isn't to say that ESPN isn't a great partner. We mentioned earlier you're one of the last of the independents. What is it like being independent and not having one of these corporate people on top of you necessarily to give you that freedom to do something like that?
I don't know it any other way. Honestly, I don't. If we were to sign a contract with ESPN in the next couple of years, and who knows, we might. I have no idea. That's above my pay grade. I'm sure I'd still be involved in some way, but I'm sure ESPN would have a lot bigger say. It's a lot of fun. Like you said, there's nobody on the corporate side pushing down saying, hey, you can't do it that way. And it's quite the opposite from my office. I have everybody in my office, Gloria and Brett and Javen and Jesse, saying, how can we do it better? Keep pushing the envelope. It's a lot of fun to go to the basketball championship where Dennis is there, and Chase might be there, and Adam is there, and Rob is there, and the guys from Boise State is there, Caleb, and we'll sit and talk as we're set for hours about all the different things we can do together, or how do you do this? Oh, I want to try it that way. And I think this idea that we're actually bringing to fruition for the first time kind of spun up probably from a lot of those conversations of, why don't we just do what everybody else is doing and REMI this stuff? Like, yeah, you're right, we should. And so it's been a lot of fun to talk in those ways. If ESPN was involved, I hope they would come in and look at what we do and go, oh, wow, you guys do it pretty well. Here are a couple of guidelines, keep going.
Watching your stuff, I feel pretty confident they'd say, I think you guys got this. We'll leave you alone. But it's still, there is that niceness of not having that and being able to think outside that box a little more, take those risks and let it fall and fail, and not worry about somebody saying, hey, so why'd this happen?
Yeah. And on the flip side of that is everything falls at my feet. I'm the one that's taking all the phone calls. A Thursday night, we switched the way we do soccer last year. And so during the fall, and it's going to start here in the next couple of weeks, all of our soccer games and all of our volleyball games now are on Thursday. So we go soccer and volleyball on Thursday, nothing Friday, which is nice. And then volleyball, I think volleyball plays on Saturday, and then soccer plays on Sunday. So my Thursdays for the next probably 2 months, I could have easily 8 to 10 events going at the same time every Thursday. Like from 5 p.m. Mountain to 10 p.m. Mountain, I could have 10, 11, 12 events. And it's constant. And so it's constant just checking. And so if I had an ESPN partner, I'm sure they could help in that, but I'll take it. I'll take a few inconveniences to be able to do this fun stuff on our own.
Well, and along those lines, one of the cooler things is, I mean, like Brian said, we can kind of try, if we see something cool, whether it's ESPN or CBS or Fox, or heck, if I see something from Sky Sports out of Europe, or WWE or AEW or something like that, and I want to try it, I can. There was a point last year where I was just, I'm weird, I admit it, and I mess around in After Effects for fun, just because I like doing animation. And I started messing around, and I kind of came up with, some replay wipes and some transitions and some interstitials and things like that. And I was just messing around with it. And I sent them to Brian. I said, what do you think? And he goes, yeah, these are really good. And I was like, oh, I think I'm going to use them on my shows. Is that okay? And he was like, Sure, yeah, because I had kind of designed them with the Mountain West look in mind, and now it's to the point where I know Boise has them, New Mexico has them, Air Force has them, and so it's kind of cool that I could come up with something just for fun in my free time, and now a good chunk of the schools in the league are using that design for some of their interstitials on their broadcasts.
Yeah, ESPN's not going to give you that freedom for sure. And to their credit,
Yeah.
they've got an amazing brand, but that gives us the opportunity. And we did a full. What brought us to our graphics package that we launched 2 summers ago, I think it is now, is we
Mhm.
used to be partners with Stadium. And Stadium had a graphics package that they sent to us. And when we launched the Mountain West Network in 2013, Stadium was kind of our version of a national network. They were our broadcast partners and also our distribution partners, and they were great partners. And Stadium is Jerry Reinsdorf and the Chicago Bulls and Blackhawks and kind of the White Sox. He owns all of that. And they just launched, what is it, Chicago Sportsnet? Is that what they're calling it? That whatever the White Sox and Chicago Bulls, they just launched it. And so a lot of their resources got pulled away from Stadium, and Stadium started kind of getting out of the live TV business. And so our partnership with them changed and Stadium went away. And this is our very first year ever being without a national broadcast partner. Stadium would take, they call them, what do they call OTT or OTTs. So Stadium would say,
OTT and
hey,
OTA.
OTTs and over the tops and over the airs, and they'd look at our volleyball schedule and be like, okay, I want to take 2 Wyoming for OTTs and 3 Colorado States for OTTs and 2 Fresno States for OTT, and then we would work with the schools and they'd get on with Stadium master control, and it was a whole other level, and the schools would do a good job and try to raise their production level because there was a little bit of extra distribution, and we would get help from them. I would get help from them, in managing broadcasts, maybe scheduling some stuff. This is our first year. We have no help from them, but there's also no handcuffs on us of what we can do or our commercial formats that we have to match or any of that stuff. So we are literally on our own. We have no broadcast partner. And that transition for the last 3 years has been interesting as well, because I could kind of see that coming. And so we put some things in motion. And the first thing we put in motion was that graphics package, because I could see it, that Stadium was going to go away. And I didn't want to get caught all of a sudden being like, yeah, by the way, we're going away. Oh, crap, we need a graphics package in 3 months. No, that's not how it works. So 2 years ago, we switched out the graphics package. We started kind of pulling away from their streaming platform, kind of making our own arrangements the way we do stuff. And so when Stadium said, yeah, we're pulling the plug, you guys have been great partners, thank you, see you later, our transition was as flawless and as simple, I think, as it could have been, Dennis. And that there's been really no
Yeah. No, it really has been. I mean, truly, the only thing that's changed on my end is the graphics. I went
yeah
from having Stadium's expression package to having the Mountain West expression package, and um, it's been great. And you know what? And to kind of echo Brian, Stadium was a tremendous partner, and I don't know that 11 years ago we could have done what we are
no
doing
no
now
no
without them.
Mm-mm.
Um, there, and so it was exactly what we needed as a group to get going. But really, I mean, it speaks to the investment and buy-in of the schools too.
Mm-hmm.
um, that the majority of our schools in our league are able to put on a very, very
Yeah.
good, clean
And let's
show.
let's talk
And
about that a little bit too, because you wanted to talk about that, which is, when we launched in 2013, it was a MacBook, it was a Blackmagic um, Decklink Quad, and we used a program called Production Truck, which was from Volar. Volar then transitioned and became Blueframe, which is now transitioned to became Huddle. I think that's where that started. And so Huddle it's
Mhm.
still called Production Truck, and Huddle uses it. And we were one of the first ones to use that. And it was 4 JVCs. a couple of cheap, 4 really cheap tripods that are actually, I still have a few in my office. Um, and we were able to get on the air with Decklink Quad and a laptop and 4 cameras. And Production Truck did everything else. You could run your audio through it. You could run a pretty simple graphics package through it. You could do a really decent stream. I don't call it a high-end broadcast, but you could do a good stream with that stuff. And as the schools started buying in, and we've pushed and we've pushed, and I've been to a lot of conference meetings and done presentations to athletics directors of, hey, the video thing, this isn't going away. It's still going to be here. Invest in it. And um, on the high end, Tom Berman, Dennis's boss, has invested probably the most. That's why Dennis's control room is so good. And then New Mexico just rebuilt their entire control room. Boise State has just rebuilt their entire truck. I know San Jose State purchased a many hundreds of thousands of dollar truck, trailer, I should say. San Diego State just got all new cameras and a nice some streaming stuff. Like, schools are building up to this, to where now, like, the whole laptop and a Decklink Quad, that's way far gone, and we've way outgrown that. And it took us I remember it took about 5 years to where I got, okay, everybody's kind of investing in this and starting to get it. And now it's just now we need to build it and grow it, which is, I think, Dennis, we are our own worst enemy in that case, because we just try to do it better every year. And it just drives me crazy. It's like, do we have to get better again? And then we do. All right, what can we do next year? And then we do. And yes, one of these days I'll get you a jib for the basketball championship. But, and then to where we are now, we now have, back to kind of that conversation of stadium going away, we now have our own app. That was Javen's big push. He wanted an app. So it's an easy get on. Mountain West Conference, you search that on iOS or on Android, and it's right there. And it's a great app. I run it. I think I'm a little biased, but along with that comes Amazon Fire, Apple TV, Android TV, plus then the 2 phones. I think that was it. So we now have our own OTT platform. We don't need Stadium, because we've built all of our own stuff out over the last 3 years. So when they went away, we just flipped the switch and we're good to go.
And that entire, the app, and I'll echo that. The app is fantastic. I mean, it just works. Which what else do you want from an app? Especially an app where you're trying to watch on-demand content and live games. When I click the game I want, I just want it to show up on my phone, my iPad, my TV, my laptop, whatever it is. And it works great. I mean, it's crystal clear. I mean, we're pumping out 1080 out of our control room, and it's like you have it's that clear. As long as you have a good internet connection, it's that clear. It looks like you're watching it on cable or YouTube TV or something like that.
Yeah, I was in the office on Saturday, our first big full football day. Utah State was streaming their football game. We have 7 football games that are being broadcast on the Mountain West Network this year that are the school's responsibilities, with help from us, obviously, to make them look good. And Utah State's broadcast was up on we have an office that has 6 big screen TVs, so we can watch all the games at once. And John Sullivan manages all of the football operations, and he's constantly on the phone as they're dealing with referee stuff and official stuff. And I'm looking at this, and we've got games up on Fox and CBS and ESPN, and up in the corner is the Mountain West Network game for Utah State. You could not tell a difference. And they just pulled it up on their Apple TV. You couldn't tell a difference between what CBS, in picture quality, I'm talking about, in what CBS was doing and what we had on the app. I was thrilled with the way it looked.
I mean, I use it as I throw it up on an Apple TV. I throw that up in the corner of one of my multi-views, and it's my net return. I mean, so if now granted, it's probably 30 seconds behind what I'm actually doing, but I mean, that's net return regardless, right? So it's a great safety net for me to just be able to glance up there every now and again and go, okay, I'm still on the air.
You're on the air. Yep.
So
to reiterate, you can find the Mountain West app on the iOS store, the Android store, Apple TV, Fire TV, Roku, and Android TV.
Roku, that's the one I forgot. Thank you.
It's all over my house, so I wasn't going to forget that one. He is Brian Tripp, Associate Commissioner for Broadcast Production at the Mountain West Conference. You've talked about where you've come from. How are you driving yourselves crazy, seeing where you're going next?
So, we added golf as streaming this last year, which was our last championship to add. We've hired a company called Golfcast to do that for us. We still need to manage that for sure. I think our biggest thing moving forward is seeing how we can integrate Dennis's control room in at least 8 to 10 events that we're doing this year. And the first one coming up is mid-October, Basketball Media Days. We will be doing, what are we doing? 14 hours of live shows over 2 days. Mm-hmm. Men's, and I think we're going from like 8 in the morning till 1. So maybe 10 to 12 hours of live shows over 2 days. Women's Basketball Media Day on a Wednesday, men's on a Thursday. Last year we did this. I used the TVU packs that sent, and it was 4 individual ones, and we sent 4 cameras back to his control room. So we've done this before, but never with our own equipment. I'm super excited to do with our own equipment. And then football championship, we're going to REMI it. I think soccer, we're going to REMI it. Softball, we're going to REMI it. Baseball, we're going to REMI it. Swimming, we might REMI it. And that's just going to elevate it just that little bit. And what that gives us is, if I'm on campus if I'm doing soccer at San Diego State like I am this year, using the equipment that they have, which is fine for a good broadcast, but they don't have the replay capabilities is really the big thing. We have some rudimentary replay capability at San Diego State, but if I can get this stuff to Dennis, now we're going what, 4 in, 8 out, or whatever your replay is.
8 in, 4 out. Yeah.
8 in, 4 out. Thank you. Had it reversed. And so now it's going to be like network quality replays is the biggest thing that what I've seen over the years, the last 10 years, the thing that is lacking the most when you're dealing with these streaming services is replay. In-game replay is really hard to do when all you have is a Decklink quad and a laptop. You might have 1 camera replay, if you're lucky, maybe 2 camera replay, and some of it is like presets where you hit a button and it just rewinds 20 seconds and then shows you what you just saw. I've been pushing for 10 years to try to figure out a good way, an easy way to do replay. And it's just hard because there's so much human element. Everybody wants, talk about how AI is going to take over broadcasting, and there's just so much human element, especially in instant replay, slow-mo replay, stopping it at the right point to see if that foot was inbounds or out of bounds or whatever it is. That's the biggest thing I'm looking forward to, is having access to Dennis's control room to be able to elevate all of our broadcasts at just that basic thing is network quality instant replay.
No, and I can say from our perspective here at Wyoming, obviously it's exciting for us to be able to, help the conference out in this way. And I mean, having the TVU, the RPS now, I can at some point probably go buy my own backpacks for it, and be able to do some of my own stuff. Though the one Brian hasn't mentioned that I'm actually pretty excited about is cross country.
Yes.
That we're doing at the end of October.
End of October, yeah.
The first live event, basically, not a media day, not a studio situation. Show. But we're going to take all the camera feeds and hopefully some drones and stuff from the Air Force Academy. And again, that goes back to Adam and Rob will be in Colorado Springs on their campus, kind of being the tech managers with Brian and making sure all the technology works. And then I'll be managing the production back in Laramie. And so, we've had some talks about remote graphics and things like that. So it's really at this point, and this is the thing that, I always talk about is that getting 1, 2, 3, 4, 5% better every single time. Well, yeah. Now we're in a position where, we can do 10, 20, 30% better in a single year in a leap. And it's not really going to be that difficult. And that's kind of the cool thing for me, is to see how this changes year over year. Like, to be honest, I'm already thinking about it, and it's not for another, 9 months now, but how are we going to top football media days to kind of bring this full circle? How are we going to top what we did this past year? How are we going to, we think about this with the basketball championship every year when we do the live post game halftime shows. How are we going to top that? How are we going to make that 10, 20, 30% better this coming year? So it's a lot of fun. And as Brian mentioned, Tom Berman, our athletic director, again, I'm biased, but in my opinion, one of the best ADs in the country. Certainly the best AD I've ever worked for. I have no problem saying that. No disrespect to any of the other ADs I've worked for, but Tom is far and away at the top of the list, in my opinion. And, he's allowed this. I mean, he's allowed me to invest. He doesn't, when I come to him with a crazy out of pocket idea of like, hey, I want to try this, but I need X number of dollars. He never automatically says no. Now, a lot of times the answer is no, because we are Wyoming. We're not Alabama. We're not Ohio State. We don't have that kind of TV money to throw around. But, but it's never outright no. It's, hey, could you do 10% of this? Could you do 50% of this? Sure, I could. And this is just another kind of addition to that. I remember when Brian and I, like Brian said, we've been talking about this for 3 or 4 years. And, I've kept my bosses, Tom, Matt Wisnat, our deputy AD, Randy Welniak, our senior associate AD for external, my direct boss. I've kept them in the loop. And I brought to them, several months ago, really for the first time, because it looked like it might actually come to fruition. I said, hey, the Mountain West wants to buy us this server to help us do championships that normally I'd be doing anyway, except now I don't have to fly there and I'm still in Laramie. So, and that made them very, very happy that I can still do these things. We can still be a really good, member of the conference, a really good partner with the conference, but I can actually stay in Laramie and do them now. And that's honestly kind of exciting to me. So the idea of doing the baseball tournament and sleeping in my own bed this year is wonderful. As much as I like traveling, because I really do. I love traveling. I'm one of those sickos that loves the airport experience for the most part. It's cool. I that's really the biggest thing I could say. I'm excited for the upcoming year and what we're going to be able to do and how we're going to be able to elevate these things.
You may be one of the few that is excited to stay in Laramie and not go to San Diego.
I mean, I didn't say that. Laramie. Now, I will say this: Laramie in October is delightful. Now Laramie in March for the basketball tournament, I may say, Brian, I need to go somewhere where it's not 15 degrees outside.
And so you come to Vegas for 2 weeks. Yeah.
So fly me to Vegas for 2 weeks. But
if I can get on that too, by all means, Once again, you can find any of the Mountain West work on the official app. You can find it iOS, Android, Apple TV, Fire TV, Android TV, and let us not forget Roku. Brian Tripp, thank you for being the first guest on the Sports Prod Pod.
Yeah, you're welcome. This is a lot of fun. What I'd like to do here maybe is, Dennis, if we get a couple of these REMIs and they actually work, maybe I come back and we kind of talk through some of the stuff that we thought was going to work and didn't, and how we made some of it work. But yeah, this is a lot of fun. Thank you.
Sounds good to me.
I think it's a fine idea. Well, that'll do it for this episode of the Sports Prod Pod. I'm Nick Case. For Dennis Trapani, Alex Souza, who is somewhere in the ether, and Brian Tripp. Thank you guys for listening, and once again, good night, Satellite.